Not just what, and I'm really excited to be speaking to Dr. Chris de Beer. He's a leading figure in the field of natural health and pioneer of the genotype approach to nutrition. Dr. de Beer, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nadia. It's a pleasure.
To prevent confusion, please clarify the differences between genotype and blood type.
Yeah, blood type is just one gene. The DNA is part of human beings. There's different blood types in all. The interesting part is there's more developing now because of undermarriage and different cultures. Just for that, that's a conversation on its own. So that's one gene, and a lot of research was done by many other doctors over the years, and books is written about blood types. I always say it's all true, but not 100%. Why? Because there's other differences. Not one person is the same. There's other body parts, compositions where we're totally different from each other. For instance, your muscle type. You are born either with white muscle or red muscle, for instance. And if you A blood type and I'm A blood type, but you red muscle and I'm white muscle, we can't eat the same food at all because you're going to get your energy from carbohydrates and I'm going to eat mine mainly from protein, amino acids, for instance. So it's just one gene, and so there's others.
Your methodology to provide patients with a personalized eating and exercising program involves dark field microscopic blood analysis.
Yeah, there's different techniques, and over the world, and rest of the world, in Europe, for instance, in Germany, they're using it for many, many years. The first genetical test was done on myself in 1979 when I was 18 years old, 19 years old. And I was amazed what they've told me what sort of muscle type I am. I haven't even heard of it. Well, just told today, there's people that think it's not true, but that's absolutely true. We differ. So I went along. That's what triggered me to go along and see where we differ from each other. It's actually logic that no one person is the same. If you think of it, if we were the same, it would have been a boring world.
You have extensive experience consulting high-profile athletes, one of which is Usain Bolt. What is that experience like?
It was amazing. I was a young man, very young. He was young, and he came to compete in Germany. And well, obviously, everyone wants to see him. Yeah, at that stage, he won a 19-year-old and a 23, all the best time in the world. And the Germans have asked him if they can get his blood and do some research on him. And he was a very friendly oak, and says yes. And the doctor that have done all our tests in the club where I was training at that stage in Germany, he was later on he became a professor at the university, Professor Klomper, and he called all of us and tell us why Bolt was the best sprinter at that stage. And I've said, I made a joke and said, well, he's got according to what he's told us, that he's the highest tested ever for white muscle, fast twitching fibers like they call it. I said, well, he's going to run the world record then. And 2 years later, he did it. And that triggered me. I said, this is interesting. And why is he so fast? And why is he better than the other athletes? Why can't all of us or not anyone do it? And that's when my research starts. And I went all over the world in America, do some sports medicine and look into it and see why people differ and why some people can run fast and others can't. And later on, we did the Germans also and some of the Swedish doctors that was in Germany. I was at a conference, at a worldwide sports conference, and they were talking about enhancing drugs and stuff. And there was Gabriel Selassie, and they asked him if they can get a blood sample and do some tests. And I will never forget it. And they also came back and said to us, look, this is why he's the best in the world, long distance athlete, because he's the highest tested ever for red muscle. And that was just too much for me. And I said, well, this makes sense why some of us can run fast, others can run very far. And then I went and looked into it. And I was always interesting from school about foods, and and in energy and those sort of things in the university, studied at the Potchefstroom University, physics and quantum physics and genes. That triggers me and said, well, if that's so, where do you get your energy from? And then I start looking to food and nutrition, and did a master's degree at Stanford for nutrition, human nutrition, and then start from there and do some more research and prove that people must eat according to who they are. To make a long story short, because everything on Earth, I've got an antigen. We call it antigen. Our cells have got antigens. This table I'm sitting on, the chair I'm sitting on, the plastic I'm sitting on, I've got antigens. They call it the antigen because it's anti-something. If you put petrol or something on the table here, it will react. It makes a mark. And that's the antigens that react. And the same way happens to our bodies. If you eat something that clashes with your antigen, it will form acid or waste. Yeah. This is what I researched, and it took me 15 years to prove and done a thesis and prove that people are different and must eat according to who they are. We know people are different. Just in South Africa, it's very interesting. They think we're all the same.
Your research has shown that holistically, if you apply this approach, then each person can fit very neatly into one of 42 categories. It's been said that it can affect our personality.
Yeah, well, I've seen everything in 40 years. Well, as it is, and I've got thousands of examples of people that, like, if you could talk about neuron systemic problems, emotional problems, and we especially in the COVID, we've seen it. If you, for instance, doesn't eat according to your composition, your blood becomes, your pH of the blood becomes low. That means that you're acidic, and everything on Earth can't live of progress in an acid environment. That's how simple it is, and it's very important that your blood, that's his life, must be alkaline. As soon as the blood becomes under 7.2, the acidity, then you're in for a lot of problems, because nothing can operate in an alkaline, in an acid environment. There's no ways that, for instance, that any virus or bacteria can live in a pH environment of over 7.2, 7.4 ideal. That's science. It's not me thinking it or find it. It's 100 years old. We all know that. If the swimming pool are green, everything lives in there. But if the swimming pool are blue, nothing lives in there. And that's where it all starts. And food plays an enormous role, more than people think. Especially in South Africa, even today still, I see people think it's a joke and you can eat anything. You can't. That doesn't make sense. I've seen people, if we change one thing in his diet, just one thing, that causes a clash, his whole life changes. And it's interesting, because one thing can cause a lot of problems. And not just emotional problems, a lot of other problems, muscle problems, and uric acid, for instance. South Africa is huge because we eat a lot of red meat, for instance. And even though if you're allowed to eat red meat, and a lot of people can eat red meat, if you overdo it, you're going to get problems, because red meat, for instance, we call it purines, and the purines causes uric acid, and uric acid it neutralizes the MSM in the body, methyl something methyl, that makes your joint wells dry, and that's why we are the biggest sufferers in the world at the moment as we sit here. Number one in the world if it comes to arthritis and heart problems. Why? Because we love meat. We eat a lot of meat. It's a culture thing. For instance, in South Africa, what's a very worrying factor for me at the moment, what I see every day with young women and even school girls, because of the fact that lots of meat or beef and sheep and pigs and stuff are being fed, and injected hormones, men hormones, to get them get them bigger, quicker, to sell more, to be in simple terms. And the hormones or the product, the manipulated product that they use, influence the young women's estrogen. And that's why such a lot of women struggle with a lot of hormonal imbalances and thyroid problems. We see it more and more. And I'm 100% sure it's our food. Just think of it. It's not natural anymore. And why don't men get more of these problems? Because the stuff that they use is male hormones, testosterone and all sorts of things. Where I stay and live, I went to a big farm here. I don't want to mention the name, and see how they've done their pigs and the chickens and how they fed them and what they feed them and what they gave them to grow fast, so they can sell more and quicker. It's scary. Really, it's scary. And if you see how they look like, they even put, to give you the idea, things in the water so the feathers can't grow. So because it takes time to get rid of the feathers of chickens, it's got a lot of other influence on our bodies. I've seen it. If you look at kids at the school nowadays, if you look at these boys, they're huge. Look at rugby players at school. When I was at school, there was not such a lot of big kids at that age. If you look at the age of it, and if you look at the women or the girls, the young girls, they really struggle with a lot of overweight problems and emotional problems, and more and more. And there must be a reason for it. And if you look at the reason and they come to me and we change the food and the diet, how they eat, they get better. It's interesting. For sure, I've got 1,000 examples of it where they get better, lose weight and just more energy and start training again.
You're one of the very few professionals that still believe prevention is better than cure.
You can't be mad at doctors or professionals or practitioners in South Africa because it's a very political influence, international big pharma influence. People still don't believe it. I've seen it. I was in meetings and seminars where they explain these things and how they do it, very subtle. But you give you an idea. Doctors in South Africa and in America still are trained as symptomatic doctors. So they mainly look at the symptoms. I'm talking to your normal GPs, and I cycle with them. I talk to them every day, and I've got a lot of friends, and they agree with me that they look at the symptom and give you medicine for it. But they don't know anything about the causes. You get some of them that done some more research and they study further, and they're brilliant doctors. We got the best specialists in the world, I believe, but they specialize in something, in a specific thing. But your normal general practitioners, they are trained as symptomatic practitioners. So your head is sore, take your medicine. You got cholesterol, take the cholesterol medicine. Well, why have you got cholesterol? Why is your triglycerides high? There's a reason for it. And that's where the European doctors and doctors like we have changed and start looking at the causes of symptoms. And I just went through and said, but food plays such a big role. It just makes sense. Where do we get our energy from? You can't go out without food and water. It's impossible. And that's where my theory starts. And I've done the research and proved that people must eat according to who they are.
On the topic of personalized diets, some of these results or types of the 42 are recommended plant-based diets. How do you reconcile that with the evolutionary logic that we've been designed to eat protein from animals?
You must remember that we live in a society of instant gratification, miracle cures, instant relief from pain, wonders, cures, diets. It's all money making, absolutely, and I can prove it. I'll never say anything if I can't prove it scientifically. Doesn't make sense. Notes is one I know him personally. Incredible what they've done, and it's all true. Banting does work for people. but not for everyone. If I do it, I'm dead in 3 months.
Really?
You must remember, what is what is behind it? Money. Diet is the biggest business in the world, and every now and then you'll hear from a new diet, everyone runs it. Certain people and the others, it doesn't work. They tried something else. If Banting would have worked for everyone, then we would have been fine by now. Everyone would be fine. Where people come to see me as well, I've tried Banting. She said, I got sick. I got cholesterol. I got a lot of emotional problems, and then others will come and say, but it did work for me. And when I tested, interesting, I said, you're a typical Banting guy. You can do it. It does work for you. You get plant material proteins. For some people, it works better than others. If you're a red muscle person and you get your energy from carbohydrates, yes, you must get your amino acid protein in, especially when you're an athlete or a very active person. It's not to say you must eat beef. It's nonsense. And some people mustn't eat beef. I've seen it, and then they struggle. Even big sports people that was with me in it, and when I said to him, look, you can't eat chicken or you can't eat this sort of fish or beef, then they don't believe me until they start doing it, and then they come back and say, gee, doctor, I'm just so much better. Everything works for me and I have more energy. It's actually logic that you can't eat anything. There's a lot of scenarios in it, and it doesn't make sense that everyone must eat beef, for instance. Absolutely not. And that's one of the men's problems in South Africa, because we got this culture problem of eating a lot of biltong and braaivleis, like I call it. And I'll tell you, that's what kills them. And that's why they don't see 70 years old, most of them, because of the uric acid.
What are your views on cholesterol and statins?
Yeah, cholesterol is very interesting. And I've done a lot of research and I talked to a lot of professors and universities in South Africa, like Professor Rawl at Wits University, amazing person. A few years ago, we had some conversations and emails, vice versa. I think he's retired now. But there's no proof. There's no scientific proof being approved by an institution like a university would prove that cholesterol can kill you. Actually, there's theses done, and a doctor have sent me a thesis what he's done to prove that cholesterol is a brain stimulant, and it just makes sense if you look into the science of really cholesterol, high cholesterol and low cholesterol. You need it because it's a brain stimulant. What kills us is the triglyceride, the carriers of cholesterol, not the cholesterol. Mine is 9.2. I've never taken medicine in my life, and I'm 63 years old. My triglycerides is non-existent. So there's no ways that anything can stuck in the arteries. I can show you people that can't take vitamin C. I can show you people who can't take a aspirin, they'll get sick. I can show you people that can do it. I can show you people that smoke for 90 years and nothing will happen to them. People that drink alcohol for years, nothing happens to their livers is fine, everything is fine. And I can show people at 30 years old, 25 years old, they're already getting a lot of problems because of these things in it. That's why I said we differ from each other. And even medicine, these people are taking medicine, statins, and these things that nothing will happen to them. And you get others that get a hell of an influence on it because we differ from each other. Some people's immune systems are working different than others. And like your blood type plays a huge role when it comes to digestive enzymes. That's a fact. And so many other doctors and researchers have proved that your blood type's digestive enzymes are totally different, whereby A are the weakest and O are the strongest, for instance. So there's a lot of factors playing a role when it comes to medicine and taking medicine for certain diseases or symptoms.
It's been argued by experts that the role of genetics, what we believe and have believed for years, decades, is really quite negligible. Here enters epigenetics.
I try to keep up to all these research and these epics and epigenetics and all these things in it. But if you look at the facts and science done on people and all these genes and stuff. The only thing I can say to you, if it comes to medicine and things like cancer, we all are scared of cancer. I always use it as an example when I give presentations to doctors sometimes, in it. It's not genetically carried over by your parents. It's impossible. So why? Because we all have got cancer cells, for instance. So you got it, so something's triggered it. So be careful. And nowadays the doctors are very quick to say, have your father or your mother died of a heart attack or cancer or so. Careful. For cancer, like I've said, you've got it, I've got it. Everyone has got, you're born with cancer cells. So something's triggered it. So how can it be genetically carried over by your parents if you already got cancer? So that's where the research must now go on and says, okay, but what triggers these things? And one of the things that I can tell you 100% sure, and there's a lot of research done on it, is cancer can't live and progress in an alkaline environment. Nothing can, like I've said in the beginning of my presentation. And I've seen it so many times when you change people. I see a lot of cancer people every week, sometimes weekly. Some of the oncologists send them to me that knows me and so on. And when we change the diet and get the blood pH up and alkaline, the CT count goes down. That's interesting. And it does make sense.
Well, what about the aspect of epigenetics that your thoughts can make you sick or keep you healthy?
I believe that certain cancers are triggered, and you can draw a line nowadays and see who is these people genetically. Yes, that I believe. But that it's not to say that it comes from your father, your dad, or whatever. And something triggers it. And I think medical science is such fantastic nowadays that there's very clever people out there that with all these epigenetics and all these things that will cure these things. And I think there's better ways to cure cancer as there's just to do all sorts of old-fashioned, like I call it, practices and things in it. We've seen more and more people get cured by doing alternatives or certain cancers that certain genetical, compositions. If you look at who get these specific cancers, and then you can say, okay, but this is the blood type, this is a sort of person's, this is what they've done in his life, and that's why they get it. If you understand what I mean, so yeah, that's true, and it gets better and better. So nowadays that people can pinpoint why certain cancers are being triggered, like for instance, lymph cancers in women. We see it more and more young women getting breast cancers, and why? Because of all these cosmetics, metals, waste in the blood. I see a lot of them, 26 years old nowadays. And if you look at the blood, you see all these waste materials and for instance, metals. And if you talk to them and you see what sort of cosmetics, for instance, they use, and that's got an enormous influence on the limbs, because your lymph glands are there to purify the blood and cover you against waste and metals and all sorts of materials in the blood. Whereby the liver is the biggest lymph gland, and that purifies the blood.